Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into the championship week edition of my top starts and sits. Obviously, if you guys are watching this video, again, I said this last night in my waiver wire video. Congratulations on making the championship game. If you didn't, there's always next year, but there's a reason for these videos too. You can always take these names and apply them to your daily lineups on like FanDuel, DraftKings, Underdog. I even consider these players when I do my underdog pick'ems when I put those together. So that's something you can factor in as well. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive right through this video for you guys really quick. My top starts of the week, starting at quarterback, I am going to go with Brock Purdy against the Commanders. I expect that the 49ers passing attack is going to have a bounce back performance against a very weak secondary in the Washington Commanders. This season, they're giving up 20.6 points per game to quarterbacks this year. That is the most allowed in the NFL. Then you look at their last 4 games, 3 different quarterbacks threw for at least 255 yards against their defense, and they have given up 9 passing touchdowns with 1 interception. So they're allowing just over 2 touchdowns a game through the air. My other top start, I am going to go with Kyler Murray against the Eagles. Eagles are giving up 20.5 points per game this year. That's the second most allowed in the league. And then you look at their last 4 games, they've allowed 2 different quarterbacks to throw for at least 270 yards against their defense. And then also, you got to think too, they also have given up 8 passing touchdowns with just 1 interception. So they've given up at least 2 passing touchdowns a game. And then one other thing I like of that Kyler can maybe stack more points. Obviously, the Eagles are trying to maybe, get the 1 seed. They're also trying to close out the NFC East division. So they're going to want to put the pedal to the metal on the Cardinals, right, and go up big early. If the Cardinals find themselves down 2 or 3 scores early in this matchup, that just means Kyler's going to have to throw the ball more, and that potentially sets up his running ability to get you a high floor this week. My top sits of the week. I know it's like, how could you be the one to deny Mr. Joe Flacco on his run right now? But when you look at the stats, Joe Flacco against the Jets does scream as a top sit of the week, going against the Jets defense, who have only given up 12.2 points per game this season. That is the fewest allowed in the NFL. And then you look at the last 4 games for that Jets defense, not one quarterback threw over 225 passing yards against them. And then they have only given up 3 passing touchdowns in those 4 games. So that's less than a touchdown through the air to the quarterback position, and they've also picked up the quarterback twice. So they've been very stout against the pass, and then you just got to factor in it's a Thursday night game, right? So those Thursday night games can always be weird and wonky and not what we've seen from teams of the past. So with that being said, moving into my final sit, I'm going to go with Jordan Love against the Vikings defense. The Vikings are only giving up 15.3 points per game to quarterbacks this year. That is tied for the 10th fewest. In the previous matchup this season, Jordan Love only threw for 229 yards, and he had a touchdown and an interception in that game. So a very, very low floor outcome in that first performance. And then you look at the Vikings defense, they have allowed in their last 4 games, only 2 quarterbacks did throw over 225 yards against their defense. That was Jake Browning and Jared Goff. And then just like the Jets defense, they've only given up 3 passing touchdowns with 2 interceptions in the last 4 games. So they haven't even allowed an average of at least 1 passing touchdown over the last 4 weeks. So that's why if you have a better option than Jordan Love, I would definitely consider it in your championship game. Moving into the running back position, my top start of the week, I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift against the Cardinals. Cardinals giving up 24.2 points per game to the running back position. That is the most allowed this season. And then over their last 4 games, they've allowed running backs to have some outstanding performances. 3 different running backs have ran over 100 yards against them in that time period. And then they have given up 8 running back touchdowns in 4 games. So they're giving up 2 running back touchdowns a game over their last 4 weeks. So I like the yards there. I like that they're giving up touchdowns. So this should be a very peak ceiling performance from Swift this week. My other top start, I am going to go with Ty Chandler against the Packers. I know Alexander Madison's back in it, but he did get majority of the touches out of the backfield. So to me, he's the Minnesota Viking back to trust in this matchup. Going against the Packers defense, who are giving up 18.6 points per game to running backs this year, that is not the 9th most allowed. And then when you look at the last 4 games for the Packers, Three different running backs have ran for 85 rushing yards, and then they have given up 5 running back touchdowns. And also, too, we really don't know who the quarterback right now is going to be for the Vikings. So, regardless of who's that quarterback, it's been so up and down with their passing attack. I feel like they're going to want to lean into their rushing attack, especially against a very weak rush defense in Green Bay. My other top, and then moving into my top sit of the week, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley against the Rams. Rams are only giving up 12.4 points per game to running backs this year. That is the fewest allowed in the NFL. When you look at the Rams' last 4 games, not one running back finished over 55 rushing yards against them, and they have only given up 1 running back touchdown over the last 4 weeks. So that is huge. So it definitely feels like if Saquon's not going to pop off for you on the yards, he's going to be a very touchdown dependent play. I get it's championship week. I get it's Saquon Barkley. But if you do play him, I would just temper your expectations in that. My other top sit, I'm going to go with Tony Pollard against the Lions defense. Lions defense only giving up 12.7 points per game this year. That is the 3rd fewest in the league. And then also, just like the Rams defense, over their last 4 games, the Lions have not allowed 1 running back to finish with over 55 rushing yards. And then they have given up 3 running back touchdowns in the last 4 games, almost a touchdown a game, still below that. So it definitely feels like, just like Barkley, I feel like Pollard's going to be a very touchdown dependent play. Like if he doesn't get you a touchdown, I feel like he's going to give you a very low floor performance this week. Moving into my top starts and sits at wide receiver, just carrying off the Brock Purdy, going against a very terrible Commander secondary. Definitely love Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk this week. Commanders are giving up 28.9 points per game this year to wide receivers. That is the 2nd most allowed. And then over their last 4 games, 3 different wide receivers have finished with at least 75 receiving yards. And then what I love is they've given up 8 wide receiver touchdowns over their last 4 games. So that's 2 touchdowns to the position per game. So I like the idea that Samuel and Ayuk can at least both get a pair of touchdowns, and one of them is definitely going to get over 100 yards against the defense. If not both of them, I would not be surprised. And then my other top start, obviously, we're not telling you to start CeeDee Lamb. You know this already, but I do like Brandon Cooks this week against the Lions. I like him as an option on my daily lineups because I know he's going to be a lot cheaper than a CeeDee Lamb. With that being said, going against the Lions defense, who are giving up 24.9 points per game to wide receivers, that is the 5th most allowed. Over their last 4 games, 3 different wide receivers that finished with at least 95 receiving yards against them. Then they've given up 5 wide receiver touchdowns, so not as much as that Commanders defense, but they've been giving up a lot of yards. And also, too, I just feel like this Lions-Cowboys matchup on Saturday night, it's going to be like the first team to 35 wins. I feel like there's going to be a lot of points scored, so I would definitely want to be a part of that. And if I had Brandon Cooks on my team, I would definitely consider him in my lineups this week. My top sit, I can't believe I'm going to be doing this after that 50-point performance, but sometimes you got to keep in mind you don't want to chase the points from last week into this week. But with that being said, I do have Amari Cooper as my top sit against the Jets. I get it. After last week, you're going to probably play him. I get it. So if you do play him in your championship game, just temper your expectations. But as far as your daily lineups, I would, when you put it together your Thursday night, that Thursday night daily lineup, I would consider not having Cooper in it. And just looking at the stats, the Jets have only given up 12.9 points per game to wide receivers this year. That is the fewest in the NFL. Over their last 4 games, only 1 wide receiver finished over 50 receiving yards against their defense, and that was Jalen Waddle. So maybe that does bode well for Cooper. But they've only given up 1 wide receiver touchdown in their last 4 games. And so it definitely feels like if Coop cannot find the end zone, he's going to hopefully get those yards for you. And I also factor in that he's probably going to see a lot of Sauce Gardner on him in coverage. And I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Saleh definitely goes to double team him and force others in that passing attack to beat them. My other top sit, I'm going to go with T. Higgins against the Chiefs. Chiefs only give it up 17.4 points per game to wide receivers this year. That is the tied for the 3rd fewest in the league. And then over their last 4 games, no wide receivers finished over 75 receiving yards against the Chiefs. And then they've only allowed 2 wide receiver touchdowns in their last 4 games. So just like the Jets, they've been very good at keeping the wide receiver position out of the end zone. There hasn't been a receiver to go over 75 yards. So I kind of feel like I feel like this could be like your best outcome is him getting like 50, 60 receiving yards and a touchdown for you. And if he doesn't get in the end zone, it's going to be a very low floor performance out of him this week. And then moving into the final segment, my top starts and sits at the lovely tight end position. My top start, I am going to go with Gerald Everett against the Broncos if you're looking for a high ceiling streaming play at the tight end position, or in your daily lineups, a very cheap tight end play. Going against the Broncos defense, who is by far has given up the most points to the position this year, 10.5 points per game. I think the second team is like 9.1, so almost 1.4 more points per game to the position. Now, when they played earlier, Everett, he had 5 receptions for 39 yards on 8 targets on that game. Obviously, you would want more yards at him, but if you're in a PPR league, that does give you a good high floor from his last performance to the position. And then looking at the last 4 games for the Broncos defense, 2 different wide receivers have finished over, 2 different tight ends have finished with over 55 receiving yards in their last 4 games. And then just in their 2 games, because of that Sam Laporta performance a couple weeks ago, they've given up 4 tight end touchdowns in their past 2 games. So I like the chance that Everett's going to have a good ceiling performance, but I also like he's going to get a good floor based on what he did last time against them. My other top start, I am going to go with Darren Waller against the Rams. He's now 3 games off of his injury. I think he's going to start getting at least the ball more, at least start seeing actual more targets and have some more production out of him. Going against the Rams defense, who have given up 9 points per game to tight ends. That's the 3rd most allowed. Over their last 4 games, 3 different tight ends have finished with at least 45 receiving yards against them. And they've given up 3 tight end touchdowns a game, so almost a touchdown a game to the position, which is very good considering for tight end. So I like the fact that I like the idea of Waller getting 60+ receiving yards this week and at least one touchdown for you and have a ceiling performance and possibly win you the championship after sitting on IR for majority of the season. Now, my top sits, if you've been looking at some potential streaming options, these would be 2 names I would look to avoid. Dalton Kincaid against the Patriots. Patriots only given up 5 points per game to tight ends this year. That is the 2nd fewest allowed in the NFL. And then over their last 4 games, not one tight end finished over 45 receiving yards against the Patriots, and that does include Travis Kelce. And they've only given up 1 tight end touchdown in their last 4 games. So if you're thinking about streaming Kincaid, I would highly consider other options because they have not been giving up a lot of yards, and only 1 tight end has found the end zone against them in the last 4 weeks. My other top sit, I am going to go with that rookie tight end in Green Bay, Tucker Kraft against the Vikings. Vikings are giving up 6.1 points per game to the position. That is tied for the 7th fewest. Now, over their last 4 games, not one tight end finished with that over the 50 receiving yard mark, and that does include Sam Laporta and Cole Kmet. And then over their last 4 games, not one tight end scored a touchdown. So I know Tucker Kraft has kind of been coming along over these last few weeks. You might want to stream him based on that, but I would definitely consider somebody like a Gerald Everett over a Tucker Kraft this week. So yeah, that is my top starts and sits for this week. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like, subscribe, make sure you follow on all my platforms. And also, too, just kind of remind people of my schedule for next week. Basically, championship games are wrapped up, but I'm going to provide some content for next week for people that do like the daily lineups. So I have a streamable defense video that will come out during the day next Tuesday because I will be off work. But I am back in the office on Wednesday, so my normal time that you would get my start sits, that will come out next Wednesday night. Other than that, I wish you guys the best in your championship games. I hope you guys go win some money. If you have any questions, hit me up. You know what to do. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.